Breathing in, I feel alive. Breathing out, I smile to life inside of me and around me. Dear venerables, dear brothers and sisters, we know that Buddhism is a religion of peace. In the past, there were many centuries when Buddhism was able to help our families, our society, our nation to have a long-lasting peace. Buddhism just does not call for peace. It tells people how to make peace. The teaching of Lord Buddha is very clear and simple enough for us to know how to bring peace to our self, to our family, and to our society. In the Sutra of Mindful Breathing, the Buddha taught us how to breathe in, breathe out, and release the tension in our body. We need only to breathe in and out a few times in order to release the tension that has been accumulated a lot in our body. Suppose you walk from the parking lot to the place you work. You may like to breathe and walk in such a way that each step can help release the tension in your body. That is about our body. For our feelings and emotions, the Buddha also taught us how to breathe in order to calm our feeling and our emotions. If we do not know how to calm down our painful feeling, our strong emotions, we will be caught by anger, irritation, and what we say or what we do will make the other person suffer. The other person may be our husband, or our wife, or our son, or our daughter. And if day after day we speak and act with anger and irritation, then we create a lot of suffering in that person. We are no longer fresh and beautiful for the person we love. Even if you have a plastic surgery, and if you are angry and irritated, and then you are not beautiful. And after a year or two, communication may become difficult between us and the other person. Everyone is full of anger, fear, and suspicion. And we don't know how to restore communication and to reconcile with each other. But the teaching of the Buddha is very clear. We can release the tension, we can calm down our feelings and emotions. We can make use of the kind of language called loving kindness. We can practice compassionate listening like Bodhisattva Quan. If you know how to listen compassionately without judging, reacting, you can help the other person suffer less just after 1 hour of listening. In our society, in our modern society, there is a new class of people called psychotherapists. And their duty is to listen to the other people in order to help them suffer less. We in Europe and America, we have offered many retreats for psychotherapists and help them to suffer less because they do have a lot of suffering within themselves. You cannot listen to the suffering of other people and help them suffer less if you don't know how to listen to your own suffering. And that is why many of these psychotherapists they don't have the quality of their listening is rather poor, and not enough compassion. And in these retreats or psychotherapies, we always urge them to practice like Bodhisattva Quan try to generate the energy of compassion in order to help heal yourself and help heal the patients that come to them. In our retreats organized for lay people in Europe and in America, we always teach them how to listen with compassion in order to restore communication with the other person. And the steps are simple. The first step is to try to go back to yourself and listen to your own suffering and find out where that suffering has come from. Many kinds of sufferings in us are born from our own wrong perceptions. If we listen to our own suffering like that, we will come to understanding our suffering, and compassion naturally arises from that deep listening. So with that first step of practice, we can suffer less, we can help heal ourselves before we can help heal the other person. The other person may be your husband, your wife, your son, your daughter. The second step is to look at the other person and to recognize that he or she has a lot of suffering inside also. If we are not practitioners and we always say that only me who suffer, the other person only make me suffer. A good practitioner of Buddhism should be able to see the suffering in the other person, and that may be your husband, your wife, your son, your daughter. When you are able to see the suffering in him or in her, you suffer less right away. Recognizing the suffering in him or in her, your anger subsides, and there is the element of compassion in your eyes, looking at him or her. So when you look with the eyes of compassion, you do not suffer, and the other person suffer less. And that is the teaching we found in the Lotus Sutra, in the chapter on Avalokiteshvara, từ nhãn thị chúng sinh, learn to look at living beings with the eyes of compassion. And then you are not angry at the other person, and yet you want to do something, to say something that help him or her suffer less. It means that compassion has been born in your heart, and we know that the energy of compassion has a great power of healing. It can heal you, and it can heal the other person. And you may like to take the third step. You try to listen to him or to her and help him empty his heart, because maybe no one has been able to listen to him. You are the first. You play the role of Bodhisattva Kuan Yin. The son might go to the father and say, "Dear father, I know you have suffered quite a lot during the past 5-6 years. I did not help you at all. In fact, I have made the situation worse, because I have reacted with a lot of stubbornness and anger. Father, it's not my intention to make you suffer. That is because I did not see the suffering in you. I have not seen the difficulty, the suffering in you. Father, you should help me. You should tell me about the suffering you have in your heart, your difficulties, your despair. I want to listen, to understand. And I know that if I understand, I will never react the way I have in the past." And that practice, that third step, is called the practice of loving speech. Nice, kind speech. ái ngữ. And if you know how to use that kind of language, and then the other person will open your heart and tell you about his or her suffering. And now you have the fourth step of practice. You try to imitate Quan Nhum. You listen without interrupting him or her. You have to practice what we call mindfulness of compassion. And during the whole time of listening, we breathe and we maintain this mindfulness that I listen to him or to her only with one purpose, that is to help him to suffer, to have a chance to suffer less. And breathing mindfully and keep that compassion alive, you will be protected by the energy of compassion, and you do not get angry, irritated when the other person says something bitter, full of wrong information. So the other person while speaking might be bitter, might be condemning, accusing, maybe saying many things that are not true, and yet you are capable of to continue to listen. You tell yourself that he has so many wrong perceptions, but I am not going to interrupt him now. 3 days or 4 days later, I will find a chance in order to give him some information for him to correct his perception, but not now. Now is the time only for listening. If you are a worshipper of Bodhisattva Quan Nhum, you should try to learn from her practice and not just to recite her name. Our retreats of Buddhist meditation are offered in Europe and America, are well attended. Sometimes there are 1,200 people attending the retreat for 6 days. And that because in Plum Village we observe one lazy day a week. Thanks to that lazy day, we do not burn out. You try to be as lazy as possible on that day to relax. And if you meet a monk or a lay person on your path, the appropriate greeting is, "Dear brother, are you lazy enough today?" And on the 5th day of the retreat, we always ask people to put into the practice the teaching of deep listening and loving speech in order to restore communication with the other person. And if the other person is not in the retreat, you can use your portable telephone to practice. The practice of restoring communication by loving speech and deep listening is very effective. And the miracle of reconciliation always takes place in our retreats on the 5th day. And most of the people who come to our retreats are not Buddhist. They come from a Christian or Jewish background. There are many young people with their telephone. They have been able to restore communication with the Father and reconcile with them, and they reported to us on the 6th day of the retreat. And I remember that in the retreat we organized for Buddhists and Christians in Macau, a few years ago, many ladies have reported that they had used the telephone and reconcile with their husbands. This practice not only work in couples like a father and son, mother and daughter, husband and wife, but it can work among two groups of people. In Plum Village, France, we have invited several groups of Palestinians and Israelis who come and practice with us. And we noticed that the first day of arrival, both groups cannot look at each other. Each group think that they suffer a lot, and the other group only has made them suffer. But a few weeks of practice, releasing the tension, try to understand our suffering and to see the suffering in the other group, help them transform a lot. And on the third week, we initiate them to the practice of deep listening and loving speech. And each group was able to see that the other group is made of human beings who have suffered exactly the same thing that the group have suffered on this side. And transformation and healing took place on the third week, and now they can join hands or walk in meditation and share a meal together. And the day of their departure, they came and report about the fruit of their practice, and they promised that when they go back to the Middle East, they will organize the practice like that, so other Palestinians and the Israelis will suffer less. The day when they first arrive, both groups have a lot of fear, anger, and suspicion in them. And on the day of their departure, they have a lot of compassion, understanding, and brotherhood among the two groups. I think this practice can be used in order to restore communication between North and South Korea and to bring peace and reconciliation. They have made a nuclear weapon. They have tested nuclear weapon, not because they like to do that, but because they are very fearful. Their way of speaking is quite belligerent. That is because there is a lot of anger and fear and suspicion. And Buddhists and others in the South have to learn to look at the North in such a way, with the eyes of compassion, and not to blame and accuse them. The North and the South is like a couple, and communication has become difficult, and reconciliation has become impossible. If the South knows how to make good use of the Buddhist practice, they may be able to reduce the amount of anger, fear, and suspicion in the South first, before helping the North to do the same. But a few weeks of practice, releasing the tension, try to understand our suffering and to see the suffering in the other group, help them transform a lot. So I think that Buddhist leaders in this country should be able to mobilize the mindfulness, the concentration, the insight of Buddhism in order to realize peace and reconciliation in the South. And then the second step is to make reconciliation with the North. I learned that on September the 27th there will be a great prayer ceremony for peace in Busan, and maybe more than 100,000 people come. I think that to pray for peace is good, But Buddhism is more than praying. Buddhism is to use the practice in order to generate understanding and compassion in order to transform the anger, the fear, the suspicion in us. That is why I would like to make a proposal for Buddhist leaders in the South to come together for a month or so of meditation to find the way out of this situation. Buddhism is a kind of practice that can generate mindfulness, concentration, and insight. And when Buddhist leaders come together, they have to provide the kind of insight as how to practically bring about restoration of communication and reconcile. We have to invite all the best Buddhist minds and the best Buddhist heart to come to that one month meditation to find out the way to peace, the way of reconciliation and healing for both the North and South. And Buddhists in this country should be able to tell our political leaders that they need to transform their anger, their fear, their suspicion, and come together in the spirit of harmony and brotherhood and sisterhood before we can truly do something for peace. In the history of Buddhism of this country, there were times when Buddhism was offering the leadership, not only for education, for social work, for spirituality, but also for politics. So sitting together for one month, we may be able to bring out a kind of recommendation to the South, political atmosphere, political leadership in the South, so as how to transform fear, anger, suspicion, how to remove division and hate, how to act with compassion before the South can begin to practice loving speech and deep listening with the North. And that retreat can be led not only by monastics, but there are many lay people who are very skillful in understanding politics. There are people who are not well known, but they have a lot of compassion, understanding. We have to invite them to come and help us. And after 1 month of meditation, deep meditation, we may be able to produce a peace plan, which is based on Buddhist practice. And we can offer that during the day of prayer for peace here in Busan, September 27. Dear friends, Buddhism was able to serve our family, our society, our country, to bring peace and harmony in the past. Now, if we know how to renew the teaching and the practice, we shall be able to do like our ancestors. If there are many people, including the young people who have left the community of Buddhism and to embrace other faith, it is because we have not been able to renew our teaching and our practice. We cannot blame them. And if we want Buddhism to be able to continue to serve our country, we should be able to renew the teaching and the practice of Buddhism like our ancestors have done in the past.